this movie in 10 minutes with this shirt. Let's go. Before we start, I will let you know that this movie is actually a product of its time, so if you choose to watch it, which it is a classic, I recommend, there's going to be some moments where you do shake your head because there's some wrong stuff going on. Unfortunately, it was made in the year 1980, so you can't really go back and redo anything. The movie starts off at a camp. We call it Camp Crystal Lake, and the first scene that we get is a bunch of camp counselors singing with a guitar, and eventually these two counselors split up from the group and they go and they start to kind of mess around in the attic. Unfortunately for these two, it does not last very long as the killer climbs upstairs to the attic and very quickly offs these two. Next, we jump up to the year 1980 and we meet this adorable young woman whose name is Annie, and we learn that she is going up to Camp Crystal Lake to be a cook for the new summer season, but she has no idea what history lies behind Camp Crystal Lake. Annie goes into a diner and she asks the locals, she says, how far to Camp Crystal Lake? And they kind of look at her very weirdly, but after just like a bit tense moment, a truck driver says, oh, it's about 20 miles. If you want, I can give you like a ride halfway there. And she says, yeah, sounds great. So the two of them, Annie and the truck driver, leave the diner. Next, they run into this guy who we as the audience know as Crazy Ralph. And he is the guy in all those horror movies who says, if you go up there, you're doomed, but everyone says he's just crazy, ignore him. Annie and the truck driver continue on, and the truck driver fills Annie in about the history of Camp Crystal Lake, starting actually a year before the scene we saw at the beginning, where this young boy apparently drowned. And then she tells her the scene that we saw at the beginning in 58, where the two counselors were killed. Ever since then, it's been known as Camp Blood, and there's been a curse to whoever tries to go up there and reopen it. Next, we meet our main group here. We have Jack and Marcy, who are a couple. We have Ned. We have Alice, who is our main character. We have Brenda, who is actually my favorite somehow. I'm not really sure why I like her so much, but I do. And we have Bill over here. And these guys, we learn, are the camp counselors for the year. They've arrived early to get the camp ready for the kids. We also have this guy, Steve, who, as far as I can figure out, is their boss up at the camp, and also the only adult in the film. The camera cuts back to Annie here, who is now hitchhiking on the side of the road because the driver dropped her off just like a little ways down the road. So she's hitchhiking, which is obviously a big no-no, but then again, this is the 80s, and that's kind of just what they did. So she's hitchhiking and a car pulls over and she jumps in. She says, I want to go to Camp Crystal Lake. And the driver takes off. And we can see that the camera footage of this one is filmed through like the driver's vision. So we're getting red flags already, and we can tell that this is the killer. Eventually, the car zooms past the road up to Camp Crystal Lake, and Annie's like, well, that was the turn, you should go back. And the driver does not go back, and she's like, well, stop the car. And the driver doesn't stop the car, and Annie starts to get freaked out. She eventually kicks the door open and jumps out of the moving car. She lands in the ditch, and she actually injures herself because when she gets up and runs, you can like see that she's limping. This is the classic girl in the horror verse who is running through the woods, and she keeps tripping over nothing at all, so the killer actually eventually corners her and offs her. Cut back to Camp Crystal Lake. We hear Steve saying that he's gonna go into town to pick up some stuff, and they just kind of keep working on their chores to get the camp ready, and if Annie shows up, help her get set up. But we know Annie's dead and she's not coming. These 6 counselors are doing their thing when suddenly a cop comes down the road, and the cop tells them that this guy is missing from town. His name is Ralph. And they're like, oh, okay. And they ask like the necessary questions. They're like, well, is he dangerous? And the cop's like, no, he's just like a little crazy. He thinks he's a messenger from God. So be on the lookout. And they're like, okay. Spoiler alert, Crazy Ralph is hiding in one of their cabins. And when they find him, he literally kind of steps out of the other room to them. He tells them, he's like, you're all doomed if you stay here. Leave right now. And they're like, why would we leave? This is dumb. And they're kind of shocked. They're shaken by this. They're like, this is weird. But ultimately, Ralph walks outside, he gets on his bike, and he bikes away. Now, it is later in the day, and these guys have all kind of split up to look around the camp and have some fun. So this guy, Ned, goes out on his own, and he actually looks up into a cabin, and he thinks that he sees someone in there, and he does, of course, the stupid choice. He goes into the cabin to investigate. Then we start to hear a thunderstorm, and Jack and Marcy, who are also kind of outside just having some fun, decide to run into their cabin to get shelter from the rain, because everyone knows, like, in the thunderstorm, you do not go near the lake, you go as far away from the lake as possible. The next shot we get, it's raining pretty hard, and these three are in a cabin together, and they're kind of just hanging out, and Alice is like, well, where's the rest of the three? And Brenda says, well, they're probably just, like, in their cabins taking shelter, or in just, like, other cabins waiting for the rain to die down. We'll run to them later. And so Brenda says, let's play some board games while we wait for them. The next scene we get is in Jack and Marcy's cabin. They are on the lower bunk of bunk beds, and they are messing around. The camera then slowly pans up, and we see Ned here with a on his throat. Someone has slit his throat and just, like, literally put him on the bed on top of where these two are messing around. It's pretty gross. After these two are done, Marcy says that she has to go to the bathroom, so she puts on her rain jacket and she leaves the cabin and runs to the bathrooms. Jack here is lying in his bed, still doesn't know that Ned is lying on top of him dead, when suddenly Jack is stabbed through the bed, through his neck. It's a pretty gross, gruesome, bubbly, gory scene. Ugh. Meanwhile, Marcy is in the bathroom here, and she hears something coming from the showers. So she goes to investigate. Again, big no-no. Why would you do that? But whatever. She goes to investigate, and nothing's in the showers, but when she turns around, she gets an axe to the face, and she dies. We cut back to these three here, who are playing the board game in their cabin, and Brenda actually says that she left something in her cabin. She has to go get it. And so she leaves these two on their own, and she goes outside to get whatever it was. Through a series of events and strange noises, Brenda here is actually lured out to the archery range, because yes, actually old camps like this had archery ranges. I remember that. The lights turn on, and that's the last we see of Brenda. We don't even see her killed. We just see her standing there soaked. Camera goes back to Steve, who is having some trouble with his car, but a cop finds him, and the cop's like, I will give you a lift back up to Camp Crystal Lake, but then I'm going to leave. And Steve's like, sure, whatever. They go back up to Camp Crystal Lake. Steve is walking up the road. It's in the dark. It's in the rain. He sees a flashlight glaring at him, and Steve is offed. After a little while, Alice here falls asleep on the couch, and Bill decides that he is going to go find Brenda, I believe. Maybe somebody else, I can't remember. Alice wakes up, and she's on her own for a little while, and she's looking around, and she actually goes into her room, comes back out, closes the door, and she sees Bill's dead body shot by arrows impaled onto the door, and she screams, and then we know it's a full-on bloodbath. She knows that there's someone here who's trying to kill them. Alice is freaking out inside her cabin, and suddenly the cabin window breaks, and this girl's body is thrown through the cabin window, and Alice freaks out some more, so she looks through a different window, and she sees headlights, and she's like, oh god, I'm saved. She runs outside. Remember when I said that Steve was the only adult in the film? I lied, because Alice now runs into Mrs. Voorhees, who reveals herself as the old cook and Jason's mother. Throughout dialogue, we learn that Jason was that little boy in the lake who drowned all those years ago, and Mrs. Voorhees has been actually taking out her vengeance on everyone who's ever tried to open the camp again. Now, a pretty creepy, spaced out chase scene ensues between Alice and Mrs. Voorhees, with Mrs. Voorhees actually believing that Jason is still inside her talking to her. Once again, product of its time. That's not right, but what can we do? Throughout the chase scene, we can see Mrs. Voorhees saying to herself, kill her, mommy, kill her. I will, Jason, I will. I won't let her get away, which, oh my god, shivers up your spine. That is one of the most iconic movie scenes ever, in my opinion. The chase continues on, but Alice ends up overpowering Mrs. Voorhees by taking a machete. We don't know if it's the machete, but we know it's one of them. And she actually ends up slicing off Mrs. Voorhees' head. Mrs. Voorhees is dead, and Alice thinks she's okay. She gets in a canoe, and she goes out to the middle of the lake, and she falls asleep. In the morning, Alice wakes up. We think she's all fine. And then this fucker comes out of the lake. Little boy Jason drags her in the lake. Just kidding. Alice wakes up in the hospital, but we do find that they never found the boy. And that's it. The movie ends. No one knows where Jason is. That's it.